In the summer of 1980, the National Security Advisor, Brzezinski, who worked for President Carter, got this call at home in the middle of the night.
It was Brzezinski's military assistant, Colonel Bill Odom. He said, we've just gotten an alert that there are like 200 Soviet missiles headed toward the United States. Brzezinski says, well, get better confirmation. Odom calls him back and he says, I was mistaken. It's not 200, it's like 2,000.
In later years, Brzezinski, talking about it, said he chose not to wake up his wife. Washington would be gone in a matter of minutes. He thought she was better off dying in her sleep, and he gets ready to wake up the President of the United States and say, you have a choice to make.
And just before he does that, he gets another call from his military advisor saying, it's a false alarm.
Wow.
It was remarkable hearing your father talk about that story.
You can hear a pin drop.
He was,
tells the story.
He was talking about being downstairs, and he said his wife and his children were upstairs, and he just sat there knowing that the end was going to come in the next 10,
matter of moments,
15 minutes. And he said he was just sitting downstairs in the dark, letting it happen. And I said, well, what would you have advised? What would you advise the president? And he said, well, if they were going to get us, then there's no way we were going to allow those SOBs to get away with it. We were going to do the same to them.
You know, when I heard him tell that story,
chilling.
I used to get sort of tortured inside because I was 14, so that would have been my brothers 16 and 17 maybe. And we were so terrible. Like, we had no idea what kind of stress he was under. And I just
all the time
wish I could have been a little nicer. That's
oh,
all.
Please.
I was a horror show.
But can you imagine that? Like, everybody has a bad day, and you come home and you don't want to tell your kids about the bad day. And they
well,
just
that happened in the middle of the
it.
night. Yeah,
well, that was a bad night. Hey, Dad, how did you sleep last night? Yeah, I
no, we
slept
probably
better.
were fighting, like my brothers and I, the next morning while he's sitting there trying to process what happened the night before. But that was a clip that you just saw from the new Netflix docuseries entitled Turning Point, The Bomb and the Cold War. We just started it last night. The 9-part series gives an inside account of the tense and sometimes precarious U.S. and Soviet relations from the Manhattan Project and the advent of the nuclear bomb to the rising tensions between America and Russia since the end of the Cold War and through Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Just yesterday, Putin said in an interview that Russia was ready for nuclear war with the West if the conflict escalated to that point. And the Emmy-nominated director and executive producer of the series, Brian Knappenberger, joins us now. Brian, so far it's incredible. I feel like everybody needs to watch this to understand what's happening today.
Well, I mean, Brian, what's so fascinating is it's not just what we grew up in, not just what we experienced going through the Cold War, but as you point out, very importantly, the top of the whole series, it's important because it helps us understand better what we're going through right now.
Yeah. Well, that was definitely hit home with us when we started this. I mean, we started this, I guess we were like 2 or 3 months into creating this series when Putin invaded Ukraine. And we were just glued to the televisions. And, you know, of course, that was a very dramatic moment. Tanks were rolling into Kyiv, and there was an assassination attempt on Zelensky's life. And, you know, at the time, Putin is telling a version of the Cold War story himself. He famously said that the breakup of the Soviet Union was the worst geopolitical tragedy in history. And, you know, but Putin's version was riddled with all sorts of errors. So it became immediately apparent that we were telling both a current modern story about what was happening in Ukraine and just using that to kind of set the stage and go back and tell this broader history of the Cold War, which includes harrowing moments like that that we just saw.
Yeah, I mean, extraordinary. Talk about having a bad night, Joe is right. Can you unpack that a little bit more for us? Because I know that you say that everything that you're seeing in Ukraine is kind of an echo of the Cold War period. Spell that out a little bit more for us.
Well, Putin is famously a child of the Cold War. He was a KGB agent in Dresden before the Berlin Wall fell. There's a famous line that he says in a book that was written about him with an extended interview where he talks about calling Moscow. This is when protests are gathering. The fall of the Berlin Wall is imminent. People are taken to the streets, and he remembers calling Moscow and trying to look for a direction. What he wants to do is he wants to use force against these protesters. And the famous line is, Moscow was silent. And he's sort of vowed not to be silent again. And if you look at him and his history, and particularly, through the 90s and the conditions that set the stage for his coming on the world stage, it's very, very consistent, and he often talks about old Soviet borders, even borders of the Russian Empire, in a kind of nostalgic way. Certainly, Ukraine has been mixed up with that right from the very beginning, as soon as he becomes leader. He uses a lot of Cold War tactics. We see it. We see a lot of misinformation, disinformation, nuclear saber rattling. I mean, we are still very much feeling the tensions of the Cold War.
And certainly we had new reporting just in the last week or so that U.S. officials were concerned that Putin would use a tactical nuke on the battlefield in Ukraine about a year ago. Congratulations on the series. We played in the moment there from 1980. There is, of course, also the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah.
What other moments did you explore and get to the question of just how close did we come?
Well, how close do we come? I mean, the clip that you just saw is just unbelievable, because that could have been the end of the world. I mean, you really have to stop and think that could have been it, because once those missiles are launched, should that decision have been made, it's very difficult to get those. Our system is built so that you don't get to call them back, really. So, but I guess even more frightening than that scene is it's not isolated. There's lots of scenes like that. There's lots of things that happen. And by 1983, there's so many sort of misunderstandings, mistakes, human error. And of course, the rhetoric is so amplified at that point. Reagan had called the Soviet Union an evil empire, that by 1983, you have things like Able Archer exercise, which is everybody really believed, the Soviets really believed that was real, had armed their nuclear weapons. You have the shooting down of the Korean airliner. A lot of people, in hindsight, look at 1983 as maybe the most dangerous year in all of human history. I mean, we knew about and we go through the Cuban Missile Crisis too, but some of that, at least the last half, played out in public. We didn't know about this stuff until much later, and it's pretty disturbing.
What was it like interviewing survivors, Japanese survivors of the bombing of Hiroshima?
For me, that was the most, I think, emotional part, and maybe I've done a lot of documentaries. I think maybe some of the most emotional interviews I've ever done. I didn't realize how many people had still had memories of that day. There was still a living memory of that day. We talked to one person whose brother had actually seen the actual bomb come out, because the skies were clear. There were no other airplanes in the sky, and he was watching the bomber. And so he says he actually saw it come down. So going through those days, those after that, and what happened, I mean, it's incredibly moving. And I think look, we've forgotten how dangerous nuclear weapons are. I think at the end of the Soviet Union, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think we all kind of thought maybe that this sort of receded in our minds. But nuclear weapons are very much still with us. It's something we need to take very seriously. We're at the cusp of, Trump let one of the INF treaty lapse, slow-rolled the New START treaty. So we're at a point now where in the next 2 years or so, we may be looking at, for the first time in 50 years, not having any treaties that govern the deployment of nuclear weapons.
Wow.
For the first time in 50 years.
Well, highly recommend that you see all 9 episodes of Turning Point, The Bomb and the Cold War, streaming right now on Netflix. Director and executive producer Brian Knappenberger, thank you so much for coming on the show this morning and for this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Coming up.